Welcome back to another edition of the Night Report podcast. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again are my co-hosts, Richie O'Leary, Alec Crowdhamel, and beat reporter Craig Epstein. Guys, we're going to talk about Scrimmage number 2. It's in the books. We're going to discuss everything we're allowed to discuss regarding what happened with the scrimmage, what Greg Schiano said afterwards, and kind of what this means moving forward. Because this year there's only 2 scrimmages, which I feel like there's normally 3, but just given how, I guess, training camp was set up this year, there's only 2. But first, this podcast is presented to you once again by FanDuel. Richie and I were talking about this before we were recording. Rutgers over-under is now set at 5.5, minus 144, so juiced heavily towards the over. I wish there wasn't so much juice on it, because if it was closer to an even odds bet, I think I'm inching towards making that bet, and you can kind of take of that what you will, despite friend of the show, Jeffrey the Greek, who covers the Big Ten, and I was on his podcast earlier this offseason, projecting Rutgers to go 1-8 in the Big Ten and 4-8 overall. Can't say I necessarily agree with his outlook, but I do think that I think Rutgers will get to a bowl this year. I don't know. We'll do a full season preview next week. But for now, let's just talk about the scrimmage. Alec and Craig were there for it. I guess we can break things down kind of how Schiano talked about them to stay on the good graces of the staff. So let's start with the quarterback situation. Quarterbacks in general have gotten a lot of high praise this whole offseason from the whole staff. Alec, what did you see from the quarterbacks on Saturday, and what stood out to you?
It was a lot of AJ Serace and Sean Ashenfelder that we saw, and I liked what I saw. I thought they've been making big time strides even since we saw them, even say in the spring game or anything like that. I feel like both of them, in particular, Serace, as Schiano mentioned, has had more time to do so. Obviously, he's in his second year, Ashenfelder in his first. I thought they're taking some big strides in their comfort levels and their command of the offense, not even just their physical quarterback traits, but the way that they lead the offense. I feel like they've taken some big strides in. We saw that in stretches yesterday as well. So, yeah, that was my big takeaway. I think that the 2 quarterbacks, both Ashenfelder and Serace, are getting more and more comfortable with the offense, and I thought they both had good days yesterday.
Yeah, and I think just when it comes to Athan, I think we all kind of know what we're getting with Athan at this point, which is just solid quarterback play, which I think in this offense with these receivers and these running backs, I think is going to be huge. But I know you guys mentioned in the last pod, and it's that AJ has looked just better, and it's like watching him yesterday. I kind of see it. I can kind of see where he I think he might need a little bit more polishing here and there, but and obviously you don't expect, nor do you really want to see AJ this year, because that would mean something went wrong with Athan, and we don't hope for that to happen. But if the time came where AJ needed to come in for maybe a little bit here and there, I don't think the drop off would be that severe. And I think just the way AJ looks will give a lot of fans hope for next season and maybe even the years to come. I don't think he's, a Heisman superstar, Shedeur Sanders type of quarterback. I don't think he's that type of quarterback, but I think he is kind of similar to Athan, that he'll come in, give you a solid, competent quarterback play, get the ball where he needs to get it, and I think there'll be a solid offense. And that's the thing I'm probably most excited about for this season with this team, is I'm really excited to watch this offense.
Yeah, and given that, Rutgers will be a sizable favorite in the first few games, including game 1. And if you go on FanDuel right now, I believe Rutgers is a 14.5-point favorite over the Ohio Bobcats. Let me just get the live odds here. They're a 14.5-point favorite at home. We could be seeing a healthy dose of AJ Serace and mop-up duty if things go well. I think we're all kind of excited to see what the future looks like at the position, but also the present at the position is exciting as well, because I think we all expect Athan to kind of have maybe the biggest season since Gary Nova 2014. So exciting times to look ahead at the wide receiver, or at the quarterback position. Rich,
One more thing on Surace that kind of
Sure.
stuck out to me. As we've known and as we've heard from a lot of different sides of it, whether it's Ethan or Shiraka himself, it kind of, once you get to year 3 in Shiraka's system, that's when it all kind of comes together like that. And if all goes well, we probably won't see AJ Surace in a big time role until that 3rd year, which I think only helps his development. I mean, we can go back in Rutgers' memory and think about, quarterbacks who maybe got started a little bit too early and didn't have their timelines completely right. With AJ Surace, I think they're doing a good job of making sure that he gets to learn at his own pace, and then once the time comes, he'll be as ready as he can be to take over the reins.
Now, I know I wasn't there on Saturday, and I kind of somewhat agree with what Craig was saying about AJ being similar to Ethan, but I think he's going to be better than Ethan. Like, I've been high on AJ Surace for a while. Like, I don't think he'll be a Heisman, like you said. But I do think he'll be better than Ethan when it's all said and done. I think he has better tools. He's more mobile. He's able to do a couple more things. I think he has a stronger arm even. Like, I think the characteristics are there to have a better career than Ethan. Just throwing it out there.
Yeah, and I think the seasoning that he's gotten, not only from being able to sit, ideally, if things go well, like we said, knock on wood, that nothing happens to Ethan this year, he'll have had 3 years in the system to be developed and to, have his body developed, ask as many questions as possible. But I think we forget, and maybe we don't forget, he's got such a huge leg up in terms of the mental side of the game because his dad is a pretty legendary, maybe not legendary, but he's been a long time coach at Princeton, and he went to one of the best schools in the state at the Hunt, no, he didn't go to the Hunt. I'm sorry. He went to
Notre Dame.
Notre Dame, yeah.
So he's had, probably if you could equate it to education, he's had like a bachelor degree in football coaching, probably from just being in the house with Bob Surace. So I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised when we eventually do see him on the football field. And maybe not pleasantly surprised because we've been talking him up for several years now. I think one of the more interesting things, to change topics, about what Greg Schiano said during his presser was in regards to the left tackle battle. Now I'm going to share the video specifically because I think when you just read a quote about what Schiano said, it doesn't stand out as much about how he said it. Now I apologize if this is extremely loud, but I'm just going to play this and you guys tell me what you think.
Lights on Ohio.
Anyone separated himself in the left tackle battle?
Well, we've had a couple guys. No, not clearly, but we've had guys that have injected themselves into the picture by playing well. So it probably clouded the picture more, but that's okay because that's a good cloud. A couple guys got bumped so they couldn't go continuously through. That also gave those guys a chance to show what they could do. So I think overall we come out of it with better depth at the tackle position, but not sure with certainty who are going to be the starting two.
So there was a very, very long pause there when Greg started speaking. So we've had a couple of guys who, and then he stopped, and then he said no. So you guys have been at a ton of practices, a ton of scrimmages. What do you take from the way he answered that question? Craig, I'll let you start.
Yeah, I think when it comes to that, you can look at it two ways. You can look at it as the positive side, where it's the competition between whoever it may be was so close that it's just really hard to get a grasp of who's the one and who's the two, which I guess is a good thing because at the end of the day, somebody's going to be one, somebody's going to be the two, but the drop-off might not be so severe in case one guy gets hurt. But at the same time, we're a little more about a weekish away from the opening game, and it's like you kind of want especially the left tackle, you kind of want that settled at this point in the offseason. So you don't want to really be figuring things out on the fly. I know at the end of the day, the first, usually as you've seen in years past, they've kind of used these out-of-conference games as a way to kind of read the team and get an idea of, of who plays what role and that type of idea. Which I guess but it's easy to do that against the Wagners, the Howards, and those lesser teams. At the end of the day, Ohio, Miami of Ohio, Norfolk State aren't super powerhouses, but they're not Howard or Wagner. I mean, again, Ohio at the end of the day is like Rutgers is a 14.5-point favorite, but we've seen in years past like it's a big spread, but at the same time, if Rutgers doesn't have all their ducks in a row, and if they're trying to figure things out on the fly, and you realize, oh crap, like something isn't working here, this is a team that could probably keep it a game until the fourth quarter, and then if it's a game, then who knows? So it's kind of like, again, you can look at it one of two ways. You can look at a half glass full, where the depth is, where obviously depth is good, or you can look at a half glass empty, where it's like, well, I mean, weakish way to go. It's time to figure your stuff out.
Alec, what's your take on the left tackle battle and how Shiano answered that question?
Obviously, he's not trying to give his hand as he usually is. I do think it's interesting talking about the cloud of there being a bunch of guys that have put themselves in position. I mean, you think about there's a lot of different options that could be in those two starting tackle spots. It could be any one of 4 or 5 guys, really, if you think about it. So, yeah, I think it's interesting. He was also asked later on about I think he called it the 2.5 deep, which is, the 2 deep and then some of the depth guys, about how that kind of works out. He said he kind of had a feel for who was going to be on it. Now it's just a matter of making sure you divvy it up. But yeah, I think I'm with that, like, the long pause that we heard. I think he was trying to figure out a way to say, we haven't really decided on it yet, without really saying, we haven't really decided on it. It's saying that there's a lot of guys in contention. But yeah, I think there's a few different ways they can go, and it's just a matter of, like, I think I do agree with Craig that if you kind of take too much of trying to figure things out in the games themselves, it could be a little bit dangerous, because, I mean, like we've been talking about, Ohio and Miami of Ohio, I think they were the 2 MAC championship teams last year. They met up in the conference championship. I mean, it's a solid team, so you want to make sure that there's still competition happening in those opening games, so that you can actually see in live game reps how each player looks and things like that. Now, I don't think they're going to go one half this guy starts, the other half this guy starts, and have a competition like that, but you don't want to take it too loosely and risk something bad happening in the game. So I think it's going to be, I feel like in live game action, I don't know if we'll see as much of a competition as we'll see in just like as practice continues to go on, as they're starting to game prep for Ohio. So yeah, I didn't think of it as a, I lost my train of thought. Oh, well, so I thought of it as like a, trying to figure out who's going to be that one. I feel like once there's one in for the first game, I wouldn't expect that kind of rotation at left tackle. I don't think we're going to see multiple guys rotating in every couple series or so. I think they're going to try to stick with one guy and then make sure that one guy is good enough to be the starter and try to stick with him.
How about you, Rich? You've been in a bunch of practices. You were at the last scrimmage, not this most recent one, but the first one. What's your take on where the left tackle battle is at the moment?
I think kind of like what Greg said, by him saying it's cloudy basically means that other guys are, and he said this, other guys are starting to step up, and that's what makes it kind of cloudy. Like we could probably talk about this one because it was on BTN. Like Dante Chin was playing left tackle. I'm assuming he's probably one of the guys. There's just so many different things to take away from it. I don't think there's a necessarily a certain positive or necessarily a certain negative. I think it's actually just a legitimate position battle, and there's just a lot of names that they brought in. What, 4 offensive line transfers? So there's just a lot of names out there too that are just like, do we really know what a Justin Caesar is? Like, no. Like, he played D2 last year, but he was the best lineman in his conference. He was an All-American. Mashu Giwa is a guy that has multiple years. It was an FCS All-American for, I forget who it was, like College Football Writers or something.
Long Island University, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, like, whoever named him All-American, because there's like 18 different All-American lists now. But going back to Alec's point, I don't think they're just going to rotate guys in mid-game. Like, I guess they kind of did it last year in one situation, and that was when like Dante Chin came in, and it's like, holy shit, like no, buddy, Taj White, go slide over real quick. Let's see what you could do.
Yeah, I think that was more of a case of like pure necessity because Felter had gotten hurt, and then they tried to put someone else in. It just wasn't getting the job done, so tried someone else.
Yeah, I don't think they'll do that for going forward. I think they're gonna figure out the line. Honestly, like you said, he already probably knows who it is. It's just a matter of announcing it. But I don't even know if he's going to announce it technically either, because they don't do depth charts anymore. So this is just Greg being Greg at the end of the day. I think there's just a lot of options. And the fact that there's depth now, like not just starters, not just second string, 2.5 deep for a reason, because there's legitimately like guys that are pushing for second string jobs now. And they're pretty good. Everyone's pushing each other, and that's what offensive lines are supposed to do.
I do have a clip I want to show. For those of you who've never seen it, the mayor of Piscataway does like an interview show called Eyes on Piscataway, and every year he does an interview with Greg Schiano, which is normally about a half an hour, and he asks Greg kind of wide variety of questions, but he did ask specifically about the offense, and I thought Schiano's answer was interesting when you take the context of who we've lost and who he mentions in the interview. So I'm just going to play that for you guys here, and we'll talk a little bit more.
Yeah. You have a veteran quarterback coming back, continuity with a offensive coordinator. What can we expect from the offense this year?
Yeah, we have a chance to have a good offense. It's all about execution, though, right? Anything you've done in the past really doesn't matter. We finished the season with the offense going like this. We scored 30 points or more the last 6 games. We scored 40 points in the last 2 games. So, I love the way the plane is pointed, but that was last year. This is this year. We lost a guy by the name of Holland Pierce who started over 50 games for us.
Wow.
So to replace him is no small task, literally and figuratively, right?
Yeah.
So, look, it's every game, every year, every week is a new challenge. But I like the people we're doing it with, and that's the most important.
So is there like a magic?
So you notice he doesn't mention Kyle Monungai when talking about the offense, which is obviously not a Freudian slip. It's not like he was slighting Kyle, but the fact that his mind immediately goes to it's going to be really tough to replace Holland Pierce. That was from 3 days ago. He doesn't mention it's going to be really hard to replace Kyle Monungai. I think I'm reading, this is sometimes like listening to Greg's interviews, you kind of feel like you're in freaking QAnon or something like that, because you have to like talk about like what he mentions, or for the Swiftie fans out there, like the Easter egg she drops.
It's the signs.
It's the signs. I think
Jersey Jerry back.
yeah, the signs. Tell me the sign. To me, that kind of reads as left tackle is going to take a little bit of a step back this year. This is the first time you guys have probably seen that. So based on the clip, you kind of agree?
Yeah, it's almost. You're losing an NFL caliber. Mike, you'll know him probably. You'll probably follow him more than any one of us now. Is that what? Why? What?
Not so fast. We don't know if he's making a team yet.
Well, I'm sorry. I meant NFL caliber starting. He made the NFL, so he's NFL caliber.
Yeah.
Left tackle, and it's just a guy at his size with his skill. It's just very hard to replace, and that's kind of just how I read it. But it is interesting. I'm like that he didn't mention Monungai, who was obviously historic running back. That his mind immediately goes to Holland Pierce because, like you said, literally and figuratively, that's going to be a huge hole to replace.
Anybody else got anything based on that clip, or should we keep on trucking?
Kind of a line there. It's interesting that that's where he went at first, and I feel like Schiano's not been shy to tell a lot of people that Holland Pierce started over 50 straight games at left tackle for Rutgers. But I do think it's interesting that's where he went to first. And to kind of echo the point that I made earlier, I think they're going to try to get those 5 and just try to stick with them as long as, if all things go well, they'll stick with the same 5. Because we saw a lot of shuffling down the stretch last year. And in October in particular, that's kind of when the offensive line had its share of struggles, when they were trying to kind of work around a lot of different things, injuries, things like that. When Tyler Needham got hurt, Brian Felter got hurt, they were trying to work around some things. So, it's kind of common sense. You have the best 5 guys out there, and those 5 stay on the field. It's going to be a better unit.
Wait, you know why he didn't mention Kyle Monungai? And I've said this time and time again. I think I said it on our last pod. I said it in spring after they got CJ Campbell. They're not going to miss a beat. That running back room is still pretty fucking talented. And that's crazy to say because that's the number 2 leading rusher in program history that just left. Like, they're going to be very talented, and they have options. Like, Benjamin wasn't there all last season, and we forgot about him completely after what he did against, I think it was Washington. He had that one really nice pass-catching touchdown the year before in 23. He had a solid freshman year. Like, he didn't redshirt as a true freshman. That's always a good sign. Add in him. Add in Antoine Raymond year 2, who was just a dog last year. And then you add CJ Campbell, who has a totally different skill set and is able to catch out of the backfield. I really think this running back room is just – you don't have to mention it because – or Monangai you don't have to mention because they're going to be just as good.
Yeah, I think the personnel on the offense, and maybe this can transition into some depth chart stuff, which Greg also spoke about. The personnel is varied this year where, like, there's guys you can reliably trust to come in and play meaningful snaps and have some different skill set than maybe the person on number 1 on the depth chart or like the co-starter on the depth chart. Because if you look at like a position like tight end, I know we've talked about, they haven't really discussed them, but you have 2 guys in Kenny Fletcher and Colin Weber. Colin Weber is probably a little bit better blocker than Kenny Fletcher, but both guys can step in and actually play at this level. They both step in and block. They can both step in and catch the ball reliably. So that allows you to play more 12 personnel if you want to. Mm-hmm. You have guys like the way DT Sheffield was used at North Texas is wildly different than the way we were able to use any guys last year in the wide receiver room, and he's going to be a starter. You mentioned the running backs. You know, all those guys could do different things. Like Antoine Raymond probably is going to be your short yardage bruiser, and CJ Campbell can do a little bit of everything. I think it'll be interesting to see if they line up in any, like, you know, any kind of like 21 sets where you have 2 running backs on the field and, you know, motion a guy like CJ Campbell into the slot or something like that. And again, I haven't seen any practice, but I think given that the personnel that they have, it allows you to do way different things than you probably could last year. So there was a question asked, I think Brian Fonseca asked Greg Schiano about the 2 deep and if they kind of know where things stand or if, you know, they're still trying to figure that out. I do want to play his response. Then we can kind of jump off there. And I'm going to show that now. Sorry, clicked too many times.
Now.
All right, here we go.
How much of that 2 deep at this point do you feel like you have a solid knowledge of? For example, if the game was tomorrow, how much of it do you feel comfortable with? And are there any position battles that you had your eye on entering training camp that you feel have been settled?
Yeah, it's all going to be about, I think I know pretty much who the 2.5 deep are. It's all going to be about who gets what piece, right? And, you know, as we say around here, you earn it. You know, so if you practice the right way and you prepare the right way, then you're going to get a bigger piece. And then game day comes, and if you prove yourself on game day, then you're going to get a bigger piece. As I tell them all the time, all I do is facilitate the depth chart. They put it on tape, and it gets graded. Everything they do gets graded during the week. Everything they do gets graded during scrimmages. So as long as we're grading it correctly, it's not real hard to figure out. It's just a matter of different packages, how to mix and match the talents and get the most beneficial set of guys on the field. You know, I don't think the average fan understands getting the right 11 on the field at the right time, how important that is. But that's what personnel groups are. That's what packages are. That's why you have different packages and personnel groups to try to get the right 11 on the field. Again,
so it's interesting. He said, I think I kind of know roughly what the 2.5 deep is. So it seems like there's a fairly kind of structured hierarchy of who the starters are going to be. Like he was mentioning personnel packages, kind of like what we were talking about a little bit earlier. But based on what you guys have seen, does that kind of ring true about what you've seen in practice to kind of there's a pretty set hierarchy of players on the depth chart right now? Rich, I'll let you start with this one.
Yeah, I mean, even like our depth charts before, like our projected depth charts before, like we all kind of knew who it is already, it feels like. Even in spring, like you kind of like, you know, the 3 wide receivers, like everyone knows who they're going to be. The tight ends, obviously still a battle. The tackles, I don't even know. He said 2 tackles before in the press conference, but is it really because like one's been there for at right tackle like all camp long, so I don't really know if that's even a battle. Centers returning, guards are returning, like quarterback returns, running back, obviously it's an open comp. Defensive line, kind of an open comp, sort of, not really. Linebackers, he's already came out and said the 2 that are starters. Corners, you kind of can guess pretty easily. And then safeties, you know already. So it's like most of the depth chart's already figured out, other than like 2, maybe 3 spots technically. But even then, like, you can have a pretty good educated guess on who's probably leading the way in most of those races, if not already earning the starting job. But yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I like that answer more so than the other one about the left tackle, just because it feels like, okay, that's more of a, I guess, a clear picture that he has he has the puzzle pieces pretty much mapped out. Now it's just about putting them in their spots and just kind of, wiping your hands and saying this is it. So it just feels like with that answer, there's more of a clear picture for the most part. There's probably some positions, again, like left tackle or maybe some other positions where things are a little bit more hazy that, you hope that you figure that out sooner rather than later. But again, it just feels like, like at this point, we kind of, like with Greg, there's no way, like he has this stuff pretty much, down to, you would think to a T. It's just kind of putting your stamp of approval and having your guys ready to go out on opening day.
Yeah, I thought one thing that was interesting that he mentioned was the different packages and things like that, because depending on the situation or the look that you're getting from an opposing offense or an opposing defense, the depth chart could be different. I mean,
Sure.
You could have a guy starting in, let's say, in the nickel spot. You could have a guy starting in the nickel spot that usually would start, just as the top guy in the depth chart, but in a different kind of package or situation, different guy could be starting. So, yeah, I think you can kind of fill these things out on your own. Just kind of using different, your perception and different things that we've heard and things like that. So it's just a matter of making sure you got all the guys that you want in those different packages and situations where it's almost like you got a few different depth charts. So it's like, if we're getting this look, this is what we want our starters to be. If we're getting this look, this is what we want our depth chart to look like. And that could be said for both sides of the field also. So yeah, I think in the 2.5 deep, I think you mentioned, I think what, the 2.5 deep kind of means, like, the starter, the backup, and then depth guy here and there for a couple different positions. But I think it could also mean by the 2.5 deep, it could mean like different situational things as well. So yeah, I think we got that mostly figured out. I'm interested to see what it actually looks like come 11 days from now.
Yeah, and I mean, I think this is the first year where they've had the personnel to kind of be have these packages that you felt pretty good about, because in years past it was fairly static. Like, you're always going to have Kyle Monangai in there. You're always going to have the same 3 starting receivers. Occasionally they switch it up when a guy needs a breather, but we had the same defensive backs out there. And I think this is the first year, and it goes to show why they took so many guys out of the portal. It allows them to kind of be that versatile on both sides of the ball, and we'll kind of see how that goes. But there was another quote that I want to cue up here where Shiano was talking about the defensive line. And I thought he brought up an interesting point. So I'm just going to pop that on and we can discuss the defensive line next.
I guess, what's kind of your assessment of the defensive line from what you've seen in training camp, and especially with some of those transfers that came in and how they're kind of adjusting?
We only go live in the 2 scrimmages. So it's really hard to tell. They're good players. I think we're going to have to play our way into figuring out exactly how it works best. And I think a lot of teams are going to be in that situation when you bring in new players. I don't think you stop evaluating just because the season starts. About a quarter of the way into the season, you really should know what your team is and what they're capable of. But I think we're going to, with as many new guys as we have in the lineup on defense, there'll be some tinkering, until you get a little deeper into the schedule.
How much of that?
So to me, that's kind of a stark contrast to the way he was talking about the offensive players, where he seemed pretty confident in the way he was discussing it. So the whole going live thing is also interesting, because one of the things that Rutgers struggled with was converting pressures into sacks. And, that is a skill. Like, getting pressure is a skill, but also getting the quarterback on the ground is another skill. So for the defensive line, for him to kind of talk specifically about they only do live tackling in the scrimmages, I think that's a big evaluation thing that's a question mark, right? Because they haven't really necessarily seen, that extended pressure, or that, because even in these scrimmages, like, you're not bringing the quarterbacks have those, whatever colored jerseys on, where you're not, you'll get a sack, quote unquote, if you get both arms on a quarterback. But the same way they in the NFL, these team-on-team drills, like you're not taking the quarterback to the ground. It's not something that you want to risk in training camp. So I think, in my opinion, like reading through the lines here, that's kind of what it sounds like a bit. Alec, do you think I'm way off base here, or what do you think of Shiano's discussion about the defensive line?
No, I think you're pretty on with that. Like you mentioned, Rutgers has struggled to bring down the quarterback, and they've always had fairly good pressure. They haven't been at the top of the Big Ten, but they've been mostly around the middle of the pack or so in terms of their pressure numbers. But they haven't been able to translate those into sacks. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it, just getting into live game reps and kind of. I feel like this is kind of the opposite of what we mentioned with the offensive line, like you mentioned, and that the defensive line, it feels like we've been hearing for the last couple years in a row now. They have a lot of depth at the position. They can rotate a lot of guys in. So now it's just a matter of seeing what the rotations look like. Whether it's a couple guys in here every series or so, every 3 plays or something like that. So. Yeah, no, I think you're on with that, where it's just a matter of just getting these guys into live action and seeing how they can, because you can't, a lot of these plays, like you mentioned, some of those like extended pressure plays where quarterback's in the scramble drill and the protection kind of breaks down like that, it's kind of hard to simulate that in a practice or even in a scrimmage because because the game itself, it's things just kind of happen. So I think it's going to be the defensive line contrasting the offensive line is something that we're going to see a lot of rotations and a lot of different combinations, just trying to see who can be the most effective at getting into the backfield.
Yeah, I was going to say that answer gave me a little slightly concerning, just because, again, going back to what I said, where it's like you really don't want to be figuring your stuff out on the fly. And so it's similar to, I think, similar offensive line and defensive line is you really want to build that chemistry and that's what the training camp really is for, is to build that chemistry. So when you get to the live action, that is just, things are just second nature. But if you're trying to figure these things out on the fly, it's just, and then you find out that, oh wait, this doesn't work. We gotta fix it with this. Again, Miami of Ohio, these teams aren't, again, they're not the Howards or the Wagners that you can just basically sleepwalk your way to kind of a win. These are teams where if you don't have your stuff settled and you're trying to figure things out on the fly, they can keep it close. And if this is a game in the fourth quarter, who knows? So it's just a little slightly concerning. I think at the end of the day, again, I think Greg has an idea of who's goes what. And I think, Alec, you're right. There will be a lot of rotations, just keeping guys fresh, which they do anyway. But it's just at the end of the day, I would have preferred, again, especially as games are won and lost in the trenches, especially in the Big Ten, I would have liked to go into the season with a little bit more of a clearer picture for both your offensive line and your defensive line. But at the end of the day, it is what it is, and we'll find out. We'll find out come game time.
How about you, Rich?
Between a lot of faces on the defensive line, between returning guys, guys that haven't even made a serious impact in their career until I guess last season, where Kashawn Griffin played a lot of snaps. Now he's going to be a guy that's up there. Zaire Angoy played a lot of snaps towards the end of the season. He's going to be a guy that's up there. Jordan Walker led the team in sacks, and he might not even be a starter for all we know. It's going to be really interesting to see how it all plays out. There's a lot of youth in there, but there's a lot of veterans, but they have experience, but they're not stars either. They weren't starters for most, if not all, of their careers. Kashawn Griffin only started 4 games last year, and that was the first 4 games he started, and it was year 4 for him already. So it's there is a lot of experience. I just don't know how it's going to end up playing out. I'm really intrigued to see it. Also, can these guys make the jump from James Madison and Ohio to the Big Ten level and be contributors? They might put up crazy numbers in weeks 1, 2, and 3, but after that, can they continue that trajectory in week 4 versus Iowa? Then you play Minnesota against Big Ten level competition. I think Eric O'Neal gets a little bit of hate because he's not Big Ten size from some people. And it's not picking on anyone, and I can understand why they say that about him. I shouldn't even call it hate. They're just not thinking he's going to be the superstar he was at James Madison. Whereas at where I think he could be that superstar still. He's always kind of proved the doubters wrong too. He went to LIU as a tight end, turned into a defensive end, turns into a FCS All-American, goes to James Madison, ends up getting sack leader of a very good James Madison team last year. I think he's out to prove the doubters wrong. I think Bradley Weaver's interesting. I think you have interior guys, Daryl Nagoe, Oliver Belletti. I don't know what it is. But either way, there's just so many different names. I just don't think they've figured it out quite yet. I think the offensive line, obviously, as you said, is like it's pretty much set in stone. I think it's done. I think defensive line, there's still some things that he's trying to evaluate. I mean, hell, he said it himself. Like they're going to keep evaluating throughout the season, probably up until Game 4. So I guess don't pay attention to any depth chart until Game 5.
Yeah, no, I guess it's a good problem to have because I do think that the defensive line is overall probably deeper than last year. Like, obviously, losing Keontae Hamilton is going to be tough to replace because I don't think there's anybody currently on the roster who can replace the kind of production that he was able to bring, both as an interior defensive lineman, and he even kicked to the outside halfway through the season due to injuries, and he was our best edge rusher at his size. So he's going to be tough to replace. But I do think collectively as a group, it's probably a better defensive line on paper than it was last year. But last year we also dealt with, as Shiano's mentioned many times, like a substantial amount of injuries to guys who they expected to start. And the defensive line was maybe the most banged up of that group. If you want to also include Mohamed Toure as a situational pass rusher. But
I was going to say that one guy quit too. Like, he got injured first, and then he's like, hold on, wait, I got a red shirt. Hold on, wait, I can go make 6 figures down at Louisville like that other guy from Canada.
Yeah, that's
Rene
also
Conga,
true.
That's what it was.
We lost Rene Conga, late in the process, which was definitely a shot to the system that I don't think they expected it to take late in the process. But was there anything else from what Shiano said after the scrimmage that we didn't touch on that you guys thought was worth newsworthy, or can we move on to some other news here?
Personnel wise, I thought this wasn't even what Greg said, but you mentioned before, like they can go more 12 personnel this year. That's something Kirk did a lot when he was at Minnesota. Hell, he had a tight end lead the team in receiving. Do I think they're going to do that? No. We don't want that. But I do think there'll be a lot more 12 personnel. Hell, he ran around a lot of 21 and 22 at Minnesota as well with the crazy backs that they had there over time. So I think the fact that I do think that the offense this year with the depth there, with the pieces they have, I think you're going to see a more creative Kirk Shiraka, someone that we really haven't seen at Rutgers maybe since I don't even know who we're looking back to. There's so many bad OCs. But I think it's going to be a very unique Rutgers offense this year. And I think
that's why I'm just really excited to watch them, just because they can beat you in so many different ways. Where you got your smaller, speedier guys in like a DT Sheffield and a Ben Black, but then you got your big, strong mismatches in Ian Strong and KJ Duff. I mean, again, we talked about the running backs between Raymond, who could be your short yardage bruiser, but we've also seen. I mean, we watched last year where even when Monangai came out, Raymond came in, didn't even really look that much different, to be honest, the way he ran the ball. And CJ Campbell, Jayshon Benjamin, I mean, again, it all comes down back to the quarterback. Ethan's solid. As long as you get solid, competent quarterback play out of him, it's just like, that's why I'm really excited to watch his offense, just because there's just so many different ways that they can attack you. And Greg said that they scored 30-plus points in their last, I forget how many games, 40 in the last 2, that this is going to be, hope you would think this isn't going to be your kind of typical Rutgers Greg Schiano offense. This is a team that's going to put up points, and if they can just get really average to good defense week after week, this could be a good team.
Yeah, totally agree. We'll see if it ends up playing out that way. Schedule is very tough. Obviously, even the non-con games, I think, are not total layups outside of Norfolk. So I'll be excited to see this team in Logan Ryan days from now, as we've been doing on social, 11 days from kickoff. But let's talk, I guess, we've had some news recently, the Big Ten kind of floating another playoff proposal. For those who've kind of not been paying attention to the ongoing playoff pissing match kind of between the Big Ten and the SEC. The SEC wants a different model essentially than what the Big Ten is proposing. The Big Ten has told them, like, we're not going to play ball until you go to 9 conference games, and the SEC doesn't want to do that. So the Big Ten proposed, or is floating, it's like one of those things where they leak it to kind of, it's like a test balloon, I think they call it, where they're not talking about it themselves, but they leak it to the right people who then let the media discuss it, and they judge whether or not they should pursue it by the reaction they get from
It's just an idea. I promise, guys, we're not going to do this. It's just an idea.
So they're floating the idea of a 24 or 28 team playoff, which right off the bat, way too many. Like we don't need, like the FCS does, I think, a 24 team playoff, and it's just it's the same way as the NFL playoff. Like when they added the 7th team to each conference, like it was a pure money grab. Like the 7th seeds have been nothing but dog crap ever since they got added, and it's just adds to the pot for the NFL. And this just feels the same way.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, the Pittsburgh Steelers have been the annual like get toasted by 30 in Wild Card Weekend. For anyone who listens to Bill Simmons, it's like the Shakey's game where they go to this like crappy pizza place, and it's the 4:00 game on Saturday of Wild Card Weekend where you know what's going to happen. You just kind of have to sit there and watch it.
I can't watch Aaron Rodgers lead into the playoffs, even if it's as a 7th seed. I can't do it. I mean, it's probably going to happen, but I can't do it.
Yeah. So what is your guys' thoughts on this proposed Big Ten playoff bracket? Because to me, on the face, like it totally devalues what the idea of the playoff is. Like it makes Rutgers' chances dramatically higher to make the playoff with the model that they've thrown out there as an idea. But
no.
Yeah, for those listeners, Richie has just posted the Bugs Bunny no meme. So does anyone have any more understanding of it than just the headline version that I know of? Alec, usually you're the one who kind of knows about this more.
I mean, I feel like all you need to do is look at this bracket to see why it might not be a good idea.
This would have been from last year's standings, correct?
Yes, this is what it would have looked like last year. I mean, you got Army
UNLV,
against
baby.
Alabama. Yeah, UNLV in the playoff. Colorado in the playoff. Michigan from last year in the playoff. I think Michigan's going to be better this year, but they were borderline unwatchable last year.
They did beat champion Ohio State.
They did, which I still don't get how that happened. But yeah, all you have to do is just kind of look at this and see, all right, maybe we're going too far. Maybe we've lost the plot.
Definitely feels that way. With this bracket, for those who are just listening, it's a 28-team bracket. The top 4 teams would get byes, but then you have, like Alex said, you have the 5 seed playing the 28-seeded, the 5-seeded Notre Dame playing the 28-seeded Michigan in the first round. You have
that would get viewers. Let's not act like that wouldn't be. That would be an NBC just. That would
Peacock.
I don't know. Peacock. Oh.
That would definitely be a Peacock game.
Oh my god, that's probably the highest ratings Peacock I'll ever get.
How many of these games would be pushed to ESPN Plus with just how many of these matchups there are?
Some of these might go on the Ocho.
Just in terms of game volume, like you would have to run like 2 at a time at least. Like it would have to kind of, like you can't run these as like their own. It would be like the NCAA tournament where like one game would kick off at noon, the next would kick off at 1:30. And you kind of be staggering games throughout the day, which
college football red zone, baby.
That would be great for ESPN's proposed college football red zone, which also is an interesting news item because the Big Ten has, or rather Fox and the providers that show Big Ten games have basically said we're not going to allow the licensing for that. So that kind of kills the idea of the Big Ten or the college football red zone, but. Where do you guys see this ending? Like, there has to be some kind of compromise between this awful bracket and where we end up. Does anyone have like, where's your strongest clue leading to on this one, guys?
I honestly have no idea. I think they're just going to consult the sports science people and say, how many games can we possibly have in a playoff before these players like seriously get injured? Because it's like, at the end of the day,
they don't
it's
care
all money.
About that. I'm going to stop. They don't give a shit. They don't care about people getting hurt. They care about making money.
Yeah, well, no, that's what was on the next point. Is that it's all about the money, and it's like we laugh at 28 teams, but like honestly, is it 50 years from now if there's 28 team playoff? Is it like if it's feasible? Would you be that shy? I mean, at the end of the day, like you said, it's all about money, and it's just I wish I could tell you I knew where this all leads to, but at really, I mean, we laugh at Boise, UNLV, or Alabama Army, which by the way, Alabama Army. that game might end like 62-0, but it would be the most fascinating 62-0 game I think we've ever seen, because it would just be one team refusing to throw the ball and just never going in. It would be amazing. But even a game like that, it's gonna get, it's gonna get high ratings. It's gonna get more ratings than the World Chase Tag Tournament that ESPN puts up on Saturday at 3:00 in the afternoon or something like that. So, it's just like you said, it's all about money.
I mean, I think another wrinkle to this is if the playoff were to expand this much, you'd probably have to completely eliminate conference championship games.
They won't
at this
have
rate.
them, they said.
Yeah.
So they won't have them completely.
So that's one thing. Like, sure, you're adding to the collective pot with a big conference, a big playoff, but those conference tournaments, they make those conference championships make a ton of money for these leagues and for these networks, and they still mean something. Like, they still, if you look last year, Arizona State, Iowa State in the Big 12 championship, like only one of those teams is going to make it. The Mountain West championship, only one of those teams is going to make it. The ACC kind of not got lucky, but with how they kind of had to do things where they didn't want to punish a team for losing a conference championship, like that still meant a ton, because SMU basically, they ended up losing, on that crazy field goal. But the point is, like, the top 4 conference champions from the winners of these conference championship games still get a bye. And with this model, you have 2 teams from the SEC and 2 teams from the Big Ten who would have gotten byes last year if they eliminated those games. So they still mean a ton. This feels like they would make a little bit more money, but it wouldn't be a substantially big part of the pie, I guess. I haven't done like a deep dive into the financials of it, but I know that when they talked about expanding from 12 to 16, ESPN was basically like, we're not going to throw more money in for expanding this. So you kind of have to dramatically rework how the structure of the playoff would be to kind of open up the negotiations again. So maybe that's why this is getting proposed out there. I don't know.
Or Tony Petitti saw like everyone hating on his 16-team proposal, and then he's like, "Fuck it, watch this."
Well,
I'm gonna post this one out there.
I'm gonna rage bait.
Petitti comes from Major League Baseball, and they saw a big addition to their playoff package when they added these first-round wild card, when they changed things dramatically to these 3-game series just to open. And that's kind of what he wants to do. That's why he wants the guaranteed 4 spots, because he wants 2 play-in games to the so he wants the 1 and 2 seeds of the Big Ten to make the college football playoff, the teams that play in the conference championship game. And then he wants a 3-6 and a 4-5 play-in game to the playoff, which would make a ton of money, in fairness, for these leagues, and those games would be extremely meaningful. So it's like a pivoted version of what we currently have to kind of just enrich the SEC and the Big Ten, which in the long run will not be good for college football, because I think that would put I think it would eliminate the idea of conferences way quicker, because you'd have the SEC and the Big Ten already making a ton more money, but this would just like turbocharge it even further. I mean, I think where this ends is kind of like an NFL type model where you have essentially an AFC and NFC type thing, but it would essentially fall under like Big Ten, SEC. I don't know when that's going to happen, but that to me feels like the inevitable endpoint, because you have just you have like 2 elephants fighting, and then you have like a bunch of like, I don't know, raccoons at the ankles of the elephants nipping at them, not really affecting them at all, but everybody wants to be a part of the animal kingdom. I don't know. I kind of hate the way that college football has gone over the last few years, and not because of one thing or another, but because like everybody loved college football for the pomp and circumstance, for the tradition, for just like the connection that you would feel to your institution. Like you actually went to this school, or your dad went here, or you were, whatever it was, you always play a certain school on a certain weekend of the year, and now that school's not even in your conference anymore, so you never play them again, despite that they've played for 127 years straight. Things like that is just kind of like what made college football not magical, but special. And with so many of those ties getting severed, it's just kind of made it purely a commercial game, which I don't know, kind of ruins a lot of the mystique around college football.
My question would be, where is Rutgers going and why is it Dayton?
Oh my God!
Yeah. I saw that.
But also, if you think about it, if you put it away. But if you think about it, if last season, if Rutgers beat Illinois, they would have probably been up there with against a rematch with Miami, a rematch of the Pinstripe Bowl, and then if they win that game, you could be looking at Rutgers versus Penn State in a college football playoff game. Now, could you imagine that?
I didn't even know Dayton had football until Alec posted this.
I do think it's kind of crazy they played a high school stadium, but
I only knew they had a team because they had a tight end who got drafted a few years ago by the Saints, and I forget his name, but
I think it was Adam Troutman.
I think it was
Welcome
Adam Troutman.
Stadium.
Yeah.
Welcome Stadium. What a name!
I looked it up on Dayton's website, and it has one of the best ways to open that from Dayton's like athletics department website. So this is how they describe the stadium. The Flyers moved to Welcome Stadium in 1984. The word welcome implies hospitality, but UD has been anything but hospitable to its opponents at home, where it is 193-40.
Do they have that up on the locker room when you tap when you're wank your way out of it?
What was
that? That would be a bit of a word salad. We are anything but hospitable. Just tap the sign.
What was the price of that game?
The tickets. You could see Dayton versus Thomas More for $13, or Dayton versus Stetson for $13.
See Rutgers versus Ohio right now for $15.
Wow.
Or use SeatGeek and get $20 off your first order. Promo code Rutgers Rivals. Look at that.
Wow, that was
I did that.
Smooth. That was smooth.
Richie is a professional. Look at him.
Yeah. Also, sign up for $1 for On 3.
Wow, smooth.
Not a sponsor, but Streaker Sports has a collaboration with Rutgers right now for their Snoopy collection, I think. Is that what they call it? And I'm only the Peanuts collection, sorry. And I'm bringing it up because they sent me a couple free shirts, but they're pretty cool. It fits well. They run a little small, I'd say, if you're looking to buy some. They had like 7 designs come out. I think it's the first college collaboration. Would love to see Rutgers under new leadership be a little bit more relaxed with their licensing. If you're listening, William Tate or Kelly Zinn, because there's a ton of like awesome college licensing opportunities that I get excited seeing, ads for. It's like, ooh, let's see if they have Rutgers, and they don't. It's like they have every big school except Rutgers. Like you look at Roback, it's got great golf clothes. They have almost every school. They don't have Rutgers. You have these awesome like koozie brands who have those awesome like screw-on koozies. They have like every college team except Rutgers. Rutgers licensing. I don't know who you are or who the person I need to get in touch with, but we got to talk. We got to loosen those standards up because there's so many missed opportunities that Rutgers doesn't have the same openness to collaborating. It seems like 99% of big time schools do.
Roback especially, just because Roback just had a partnership with On3.
Yeah.
Use the promo code UCO20 right now for 20% off. $20 off? I think it was 20%. 20% off. It's not Rutgers branded, but you can still use the promo code.
Well, if it's 20% of 100, then it's $20. So there you go.
Yeah, it's
some nice stuff too.
But there's no Rutgers. Like, what are we doing?
Yep.
Like, I feel like you were too nice to those licensing people. I'm sorry, but they got to get their shit together. There's
I remember
too much cool stuff. Like,
I reached out to Home Field a few years ago. This was before they had the expanded Rutgers collection, and I asked what the deal was because they made awesome stuff. They've obviously exploded the last few years, but Home Field stuff, quality wise, in terms of the materials, it's awesome. All the shirts fit perfectly, but also the designs are incredible. And Rutgers had 2 designs on their site for years. I want to say like 2 or 3 years. And I contacted them like, hey, love your stuff. When are we going to get more Rutgers designs? And they answered and they said, we've been in talks, but that is a Rutgers licensing decision that we've presented them with dozens of designs and these are the only 2 they approved. So it's not really a whole lot we can do. Obviously that changed because they now have, I want to say around 20 designs and they look great. They fit great. They're not a sponsor, but they have awesome stuff. So if you are looking for apparel other than Night and Day Apparel, Home field makes great stuff, so check it out. But yeah, hopefully it's relaxed. That's kind of the point of going on about this. So
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there, like you mentioned, there's a lot of great stuff out there. That actually, one thing I actually got for my dad for Father's Day this past year was the Fat Sandwich shirt from Home Field.
oh yeah, that one's great.
Yeah, I should have that one.
He loves it, so I'm
And it's
glad
like that
it
heavyweight
worked.
T-shirt too. It's
Yeah.
not like that, like the thin ones. It's pretty cool.
Yeah,
But like, there's stuff like that. There's so much possibilities you could do. Like, and it's just they don't approve anything. I don't know. Maybe whoever's in charge has got to figure it out. But back to the Peanuts collection. I'll pay the holder any amount of money this year to pull a Lucy on.
I was thinking about
Jay
that
Patel.
Yeah, that's kind of a missed opportunity with how many references it seems that Rutgers fans make of, pulling the football out, but
And
making
just
us
put
swipe
"Are
out.
you screw" under it or something.
Anyway,
All right, we've gone almost an hour. We've talked about a lot of different things. Was there anything that we missed that we wanted to touch on before we head out of here, guys?
Well, I mean, good night for the Giants, I guess. Jackson Dart looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback week 1 for the Giants. So there's no pressure on Russ. No pressure on Russ.
We're not doing
Let him cook. You know as well as I do. If you guys start 0-2 with losses to Washington and Dallas, you guys are going to be screaming for Jackson Dart to start. You know it.
No.
Yes, you are.
Scream for my boy. Eat some W's.
No, he looked. Because I was at the scrimmage yesterday, he looked pretty bad. Not gonna lie.
Yeah, he's a struggle bus. But women's basketball, Alec, come on, dude, nothing, not even a single blip out of you.
I wasn't sure if we wanted to bring this up here because we've been going for almost an hour. But yeah, the contracts for the 4 new assistant coaches were updated a couple of days ago. Let me see if I can pull up the article so I know exactly what I'm talking about. So Shannon LaBeouf, which is the assistant coach that they brought in from UCLA, is getting a 1-year deal for $400,000, and then there's also all 4 assistants have the same what's the word I'm looking for bonuses for performance-based bonuses in their contracts. So it's pretty much boilerplate stuff, like WBIT appearance 2,500, conference championship 5,000 for regular season and tournament, and then NCAA each round gets another 5,000. So pretty much boilerplate stuff. But yeah, Shannon LaBeouf 400,000. So they all have 1-year deals. They all expire on April 30th, which I've seen some people say, is this a sign that things that change could be coming? I don't think so. I mean, now, if this season does not go well, I think there's definitely conversations to be had about making a change. But at the same time, for Rutgers basketball, the 1-year deals aren't exactly a deviation from the norm. Like some of these, a few of the men's assistant coaches and the women's assistant coaches have been on 1-year deals for the past couple years. So I don't think it's now. I wouldn't be totally surprised if that's the case that they do make a change, but I don't think that would be that signing the assistants 1-year deals would be a sign of it. I'll bring up the story here. So yeah, Sean LaBeouf, who is Shannon's husband, who is at UC Riverside, has a 1-year deal for $150,000. Danielle Edwards, who they brought in from SNU, $140,000, and then James Spinelli, who they brought in from Northeastern, also worked with Coquise Washington at Notre Dame, $110,000. Another thing that I thought was interesting about the contracts themselves, so they were signed on around August 5th to August 7th, around that time frame. The assistant coaches, so Edwards and Sean and Shannon LaBeouf, were signed by acting athletic director Matt Colagiovanni. August 5th was his last day as the interim athletic director before Kelly Zinn officially took over the role. But then for Spinelli, as well as the director of basketball operations Alejandro Ramirez, were signed by deputy athletic director and chief operating officer Mike Zool, who has signed. I think he signed a few contract extensions. Yeah, he signed when in the past year when Ryan Pisari was the interim. So I thought it was interesting to see how that broke down. I mean, not too much conclusions to take away from it, but new women's basketball contracts. So yeah.
NBA schedule's out too. Kind of cool. I mean, they're going to be in the Northeast at least, if you count Washington and Boston as the Northeast, which technically yes. Both guys will be in the Northeast at least 5 times this season. So check out that article. Some pretty good stuff there.
I thought it was really cool that Ace and Dylan are both playing in Philadelphia on back-to-back nights.
I think that's March 3rd and 4th.
Yeah, might
Somewhere
just
around
have to, make a little road trip for a couple days.
We don't live that far from Philadelphia.
Yeah, true. But I'm going to enjoy it if I'm down there.
All right. Well, like I said, we are 11 days from the kickoff of the Rutgers Scarlet Knights football season. I think game week starts this week, technically.
Yep.
I think they finish up camp midweek. I think they have one more practice or two more practices in terms of training camp. So Shiano will have his game week presser when, Rich? Is that this week or next week?
It's definitely next week. I still think it's going to be
Monday?
on the Monday.
Okay.
Technically, camp's over.
Camp is over. Okay.
It's like game week prep, automatic. The guys are back in their dorms or off-campus housing, wherever they're living. So no more hotel. But yeah, I don't know the exact day. I mean, I'll let people know when we do.
One last thing. Rutgers is 1-0 this year in the 2025-26 athletic calendar. They beat NJI. The women's soccer team beat NJIT 3-0 on Thursday in the opening game of the entire season.
Well, congratulations to the women's soccer team on a strong start to the Rutgers 2025-2026 athletic calendar. We'll have more on the Ohio Bobcats game week. We're going to have somebody who covers the Ohio Bobcats soon. We're going to have a full season preview next week where we break down every game, give our predictions like we did last year, and we're still trying to work on another guest before the season starts to go over their team and what they expect in terms of 2025, the Scarlet Knights football team. But for me, Alec, Richie, and Craig, this has been another edition of the Knight Report podcast, signing off.